video that's called. How have you been? We're not there yet, just
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I've been okay. I have both my vaccines, so I'm happy for that.
I've got one Tuesday and I'm done.
Yeah.
That's called. Okay, we are live on YouTube. How have you been? We're not there yet, just
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I've been okay. I have both my vaccines, so I'm happy for that.
I've got one Tuesday and I'm done.
Yeah.
That's called. Okay, we are live on YouTube. How have you been? We're not there yet. Just
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I've been okay. I have both my vaccines, so I'm happy for that.
I've got one Tuesday and I'm done.
Yeah.
Okay, we are live on YouTube. You hear all that reverb?
Yeah, I do hear that reverb.
Oh, it's pretty funny. Reverb?
Yeah, I do hear that reverb.
We're gonna clean this up right now. Oh, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I do hear that reverb.
We're gonna clean this up. A little bit of silence. Let me just get onto Facebook. Okay, we're just waiting for the radio station. I think we got some great topics this morning. I'm looking forward to I was telling a friend of mine about the fact that Black colleges were not something that you had even considered either. So for those of us who grew up in in families with a long history of attending Black colleges, it's just kind of a given that you knew about them. That doesn't mean you were going to go to one, but it certainly meant that you were going to, be very familiar with it.
Right.
So let's see. Okay. So what is that? You've got all kind of cool stuff there behind you. Pepperdine College. No, it's Providence College. I was going to say.
Providence College.
That was my West Coast bias, hitting with the Pepperdine.
Yeah, see that? I'm teaching at Providence College again, so I had to make sure I had that up there.
Oh, so what are you teaching?
I am the college supervisor for the school counseling intern. So I run the school counseling master's program. I run the internship program.
You run the internship program.
Yeah. So people who are school counselors have to do a full year of internship, just like student teaching. So I am the college supervisor. So I help them set up their internships. I talk with their site supervisors. I teach classes on different topics that they're interested in. Like this month, we're looking at mental health awareness, and we're looking at how the school psychologist works with school counselors in schools.
Well, you've got there's a boatload of conversations. As a matter of fact, I facilitated a roundtable of educators just last night talking about this transition back to in-person
Yes,
education and the trauma and the challenges for students, faculty, staff, and parents in terms of making that transition.
that's going to be a huge transition.
As someone as one of the participants said, you're going to have kids coming into school, transitioning, and leaving school almost like at the same time because the semester is going to be over. You know,
Right,
but I remember how it felt for me entering the school year, the excitement and the nerves in the pit of my stomach at the beginning of every year. And I have no doubt, even into high school, that I it took me a little while to settle down.
right. It
You know,
does.
I didn't walk through the door, sit at the thing, and say, open my book and say, okay, let me get this education. I was like, okay, where are my friends? Who is going to be my friend? Where
Mhm.
do you eat? How do you get to and from school? All of those questions were way more important than what was taking place in the classroom.
Exactly. That's going to high school is such a huge transition. I know two of my young friends who are actually ninth graders this year. So they haven't had that traditional transition into high school.
Right.
And I don't know what it's going to be like for them when they go back in April. Um, because again, you've got to establish all those norms, just like you said, all those friendship groups. Um, Girls, are very relational. So it's how do we do that? How do we hit our stride? How do we come off this strange schedule of online learning? And now 2 days a week we're going into the classroom, and then Wednesdays we're going back online. What does that look like for kids?
And how about somebody very young who right now is maybe in the second grade or maybe the first grade? I'm trying to think of if you got interrupted last year in March, and then you've all the way to here. There's some young people who have never spent a day in a classroom all day,
Right.
and they're having to come to grips with not being at home, not being able to kind of go to the bathroom or eat food while if you want to munch on something while you're
Mhm.
sitting at home.
Right. You just do it.
And you just do it. You probably got set up. Your parents probably set you up with a little something to eat, something to drink right next to the computer, so
Mhm.
that you didn't have to get up. And now you're going to be in a classroom where you just sit here, no food, nothing to drink, don't need think about going to the bathroom without permission. Talk about significant shifts. It's going to be fascinating.
It is. I think what's going to happen is there will be a lot of extending grace because teachers are trying to figure out what this looks like for them. And then, like you said, if you have a student who hasn't been in school at all, this is their first time to be in a classroom. That's going to be a really tough transition, and it'll be different for each student because there are some students who are doing a small percentage probably who are doing really well with online learning and would
Yes.
probably like to stay with online learning
Yes.
because for them that works, but so many other students, the socialization part is huge. I mean, our kids are all going through these developmental stages that happen based upon the relationships that they're able to build, how they're able to conduct themselves in different spaces. And when you're home, like you said, comfortable in your pajamas, or whatever you're wearing for that day, sitting in your bed, whatever it may be, that's going to be a hard transition. I've been talking to my young mentees to see how they're feeling about it. Like I said, two are going into high school and two are still in middle school, and they're struggling. They're tired of online though. They are tired of it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things just to mention before we get on the air with WIDU, but folks on YouTube and on Facebook, we're doing COVID shots today over at E.E. Smith High School.
Great.
So if you have not gone and gotten your COVID shot, you mentioned you've gotten both of yours.
Yes.
I get my second shot on Tuesday, and so we don't want to miss making sure that I'm listening to see what the radio's doing, the radio station is doing because they haven't logged in yet, to make sure that you do that. I mean, our community, there's several communities that seem to be very reluctant. It is not it's not helping you personally if you choose not to do it because you're susceptible. It's not helping your family because you could be exposing members of your family if you choose not to do it. And it's keeping the economy from opening completely back up because all these restrictions that we've put on the activities of people is keeping employment suppressed.
It is.
So we really are just in a position where we've got to step out on faith and say, listen, the government has not developed something that they're attempting to poison the entire community and the entire world for that matter. We've got to believe that and take the opportunity to get this vaccine so we can get moving. I have told everybody that my number one thing once it's all broken up, all over, is I'm just gonna go around hugging people. I mean, I'm gonna start hugging strangers. Just I'll be so glad to have the opportunity that it'll be a joyous time.
It will be.
Good morning.
Hey, Darswell, I'm ready when you are.
We are ready.
Okay, buddy. They just did a live cut from the patient clinic. We're going right to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, brother. Once again, the vaccination clinic is going on over at E.E. Smith High School. Apologies, Coach Harvey, the technology. We are working this today. So many great things that are going on. We are early on this Friday morning, the 19th, and I'm sure we are all so grateful that the storms yesterday were not worse. There's much damage assessment going on across the state, and we will update you throughout the day and throughout our news sources. Once again, the vaccination clinic is live at E.E. Smith. We'll be checking back in with Coach Harvey and Dr. Wells in just a little bit. Right now, it's time for Grow Your Business Today, the award-winning, outstanding second longest running program on the Wake Up platform. We appreciate so much our business leader, Darswell Rogers.
Hey, good morning.
Grow Your Business Today. We'll go live now to Darswell Rogers.
And good morning. Happy Friday, the 19th here in the Greater Sand Hills region. It's a little bit wet, but we are very thankful that we did not get the severe weather that had been forecasted. I can tell you the folks over at PwC who had done a whole lot of preparation in anticipation for something more significant are all breathing a sigh of relief. And we're thankful that things did not turn out as bad as we had expected. We do have in our prayers those who did suffer severe weather over the course of the last couple of days, that things turn out well for them. So welcome to talking about business. Education is going to be a big focus today. But before I jump into that, let me just emphasize what Brother West was saying. The E.E. Smith COVID vaccine clinic is open. We absolutely positively want you to go and get vaccinated. I get my second shot on Tuesday. If you fail to get a shot, there's three things that happens. You run the risk of getting COVID, which could have significant health ramifications. You run the risk of family members getting COVID, which could have significant health ramifications. And you are delaying the opening of our economy. Our economy has been constrained because of concerns with COVID. And there are people that you know who are currently unemployed or underemployed because of the fact that COVID exists. So for your own welfare, for the welfare of your family, your community, and the overall economy and employment, we implore you to take the step to get the vaccine. Okay, that's really critical and really important. And so what I want to do now is to pivot. I've got a guest in studio. I mean, guest on Zoom with me, and you can listen to us on Facebook or on YouTube. That has been a friend of mine. I want to say we kind of sort of hit Fayetteville around the same time that we arrived here. Dr. Belinda Wilkerson with her company Steps to the Future. Good morning, Belinda.
Good morning, Doswell. Thank you so much for having me on this morning.
I was telling a friend of mine before I got on. I said, they said, who do I have on? I said, I have a Southerner from Rhode Island that's going to join us. You'll be able to tell from her accent that she's from, Southern Rhode Island. Perhaps we'll go with that one. So how you doing?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I'm doing well. Like you, I actually have had both of my vaccines, so I'm thrilled about that. Fully vaccinated. Can't wait to be able to get out on the road and go visit colleges and like you said, hug people. I can't wait. I haven't seen my oldest son in over a year, and that's killing me. So I can't wait to go back home to Rhode Island so I can hug on him a lot, and my brother and other friends and colleagues there. So I've been doing okay.
Good. So share with folks, you've been on the program several times, but share with folks what it is that you do at Steps to the Future.
Okay, so at Steps to the Future, what we are is we're a college and career counseling service. So we work with families on helping them to eliminate random acts of college planning. And I do that by working with families and their students in the search, selection, transition, and application to college. So I'm a former school counselor. Well, I shouldn't say former, I'm still a school counselor because I actually have another job where I am working as a college counselor at a school in outside of Durham or in Durham. So I work with students on everything they need to do to prepare for getting ready for college. I do not, and this is so important for people to remember, I do not supplant what the school counselor does. I supplement. Because I'm my own business, I'm able to work with students based on their schedules. And I'm able to do different things because I'm not in a school. I don't have lunch duty, bus duty, even though right now people haven't had that because of COVID. It just allows me to do things differently sometimes.
What's interesting is the question as to why someone would use a counselor outside of school to help you make those decisions about school is a debate that I frequently hear. So go ahead and address that basic question. Why would I? There's a school counselor. So why would I go through the time and the expense of having someone outside help me to make decisions about my career, my school choice for college?
Okay, and that's a valid question because it is a question that so many people ask. I know I get asked that question all the time. So I'll go back. When I was a school counselor, I had a caseload of like 350 students, 9 through 12. There's only so much you can do during the school day when you have a caseload that big. Many caseloads are still like that throughout the United States. I mean, ASCA, the American School Counselor Association, recommends a caseload of 250 to 1 for school counselors. That's not possible in a lot of school districts. So one of the reasons, and again, this is just like anything else. If you choose to invest your money in something beyond what the school has to offer, then hiring an independent might be what you want to do. Same as you have a student who's a great athlete. So you think, okay, let me put him in AAU. That's additional expense. That's outside of what the basketball coach is doing. You have a student that's a talented musician. So they're taking outside music lessons in addition to what the school band is doing. So this is somewhat similar. You have a student that, they're struggling in English, they're struggling in math. So you have a tutor outside. So this is an extra pair of hands, an extra pair of eyes. What I would love to do is whenever I work with students, I love to be able to collaborate with their school counselor to do that, because the more hands that are on this, the better it is for the student. That doesn't always happen. But however, I do tell all my students, your school counselor is your first line of connecting with colleges. I'm there to supplement whatever they do. But like I said, I have the time. My hours are typically afternoon and late evenings and weekends. So it's based around the student schedule. So it gives me, and I'm also able to do a lot, pre-COVID, was able to do a lot of those college tours that counselors aren't always able to do. They can't just leave their school for a week and go off and visit, 14 or 15 colleges. I'm able to do that. So I'm able to get firsthand knowledge of the colleges in that way. We're also able to, similar to counselors, we're also able to meet with admission reps virtually. I've been doing so many virtual meetings during this COVID time because we can't travel. And we now have really great relationships with a lot of the colleges throughout the United States, a lot of great relationships with the National Association for College Admission Counseling. They recognize the value that independent counselors can bring to the situation. Again, it all depends on what the needs are of the family and what they would like. It's
You
not
know
for
what?
everyone.
Reflecting on my son's experience and reflecting on my fairly limited experience, where my actually high school guidance counselor told me I didn't have the aptitude for college. I think that the fact that a family decides to hire someone outside and lets the high school counselor know that they have
Mm.
confirms a level of seriousness on the part of the student and the family that they really want to find the best outcomes. And it may be a slight benefit in terms of interfacing with that counselor, but I think that the fact that they know you've got somebody that you're serious about finding the right solution, just any solution, probably enhances the focus that they bring to the engagement with the student.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with you on that. I definitely agree with you on that. And it's important for anyone that is working as an independent to understand that, again, the school counselor is the one in the pilot seat, and you're there to, co-pilot,
Right.
basically. But
So
in a
let's
way,
talk about some of the basic let's call them the common mistakes or common misperceptions that families or students have about the process of picking the right college. What are some of the common themes there that are not understood?
okay. So typically what we see is, working with students, and kids will say, this is my dream school. This is the college I want to go to because I've always wanted to go there, or what have you, without having that financial fit conversation. I think that's the number one issue right now with families. Before you have conversations about dream colleges or even what you might want to study, let's look at financial fit. What can you afford? Have an honest conversation with your student, with your child, about what can we afford. If we cannot afford a certain amount, what's in our budget, then we need to look at colleges that are in our budget. And there's a way of doing that, but you have to start with that first. So many people start first with where they want to go, and then say, oh, we'll make it work. That's how you get into trouble. You may be able to, sometimes you can make it work for 1 year, but remember, this is a 4-year to 6-year endeavor. So you want to have that financial fit conversation right off the bat, and don't wait until senior year. Have this conversation early.
I would say that's another one of the misperceptions. When should you start the college planning process?
Well, I don't think students should start thinking about specific colleges like as early as ninth grade, but I do think you need to start creating a college going culture in your home as soon as possible. I mean, I don't think middle school is too early to start thinking about what your life may look like post high school, and you do that in a developmentally appropriate way. So it just may be, like I have these pennants on my wall, so it may be, hey, did you know about this school? Or you're watching sports or something, and you see a basketball team, so let's look up and see where that college happens to be. But I think once students start hitting high school, we need to start thinking about those conversations, because what they do in ninth and 10th grade will affect their outcomes when they start applying to colleges. Too many students get to junior year or senior year and say, oh, well, if I had known that, maybe I would have taken this course, and maybe I would have applied myself a little bit more. So you can't go back retroactively and fix things. So the sooner students know, this is what you need for this school. This is what you need. If this is the school you're interested in, let's see what it is you need to get into that school. Is there a certain GPA? Okay, let's make sure you're working on that.
It's certainly reminiscent. I'm relying on more of my memory. If you wanted to go growing up in Los Angeles, if you wanted to go to one of the UC system schools, you had to have 2 years of a foreign language in high school,
Right.
right? If you had 2 years of foreign language in high school, I mean, it was just like a disqualifier. That's interestingly enough, of all the things that might be sitting out there, that's the one that strikes me. Talk a little bit about where are we today with standardized testing? I've heard all sorts of conversations about, and I know back when I was in it, it was on an 1800, 1600 scale. I think they added another one for writing, so it's like a 2400 scale. If my numbers are wrong, please correct me. But then now I'm hearing that some schools have completely eliminated it. So what's going on with these standardized tests?
Okay, so it was started out under 1600, went to 2400 for SAT. Now it's back to 1600.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's back to 1600. So actually, North Carolina is an ACT state, which means that every public school junior will take the ACT through where the Department of Public Instruction pays for that. So that is definitely something that students, all juniors, so I want to say they usually do it in March in Cumberland County, around February, March, they will take the ACT. Now, what's been happening is because of COVID, students weren't able to test centers because schools are typically the test centers. Schools were closed. So there was no way students were able to go and take a test. So colleges and universities realize now they have to be able to look at their applications and make decisions without the test score. They could not penalize students for not having a test score. So many schools went what we call test optional, which means if you do not submit a test score, you won't be penalized in the admission process. Now, that's what they said. And we've had actually quite a number of colleges that signed a pledge with the National Association of College Admission Counseling, NACAC, that they would not penalize students if they did not have a test score. So you had your test optional. Now, sometimes, so test optional means they don't look at the score when they make an admission decision. That does not mean if you have a test score, don't submit it. So here's where the strategy starts coming in. You want to look at, if you have a test score, you want to look at a college's website or one of the other research websites on colleges. If your test score puts you in the top 25% of test scores of admitted students, you want to submit those scores because that can only help you. If you're in the mid 50%, you also might want to do that. If your score is toward the end of the mid 50% or in the lower 25%, then you do not want to submit that test score because it's not going to help you. Right now, we're waiting to see what colleges are going to do, how many are going to remain test optional for next year, because there are still difficulties with getting, testing centers and test dates.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, what you're saying is that because of the limited space, some kids did get the ACT. Either they took it maybe the year before and had a good score, or they've been in a situation where while there was limited space to take a test, you couldn't put the masses of young people together as in the past. So I get that. I'm curious in terms of, are there any schools in North Carolina, and then we can go beyond, that have said we're not taking standardized tests? What's the story there? Because I've heard conversations. I get the sense it's maybe the top schools that are making that decision. But share with my audience what the situation is.
So that's what we're waiting to hear from quite a few systems now. So last year, the UNC system, the public system, went test optional. So all of the 16 public UNC systems were test optional. That came down through the Board of Governors. We're waiting to see whether or not that's also going to be in place for next year. We have, like, for example, Wake Forest, which is a private university, they were actually test optional way before COVID. They made a decision maybe 10 years ago or longer to go test optional. So they've been test optional. They know how to look at applications without having test scores. Any of the systems that are part of a state system, the state system has to make that designation. Schools can't on their own, like Chapel Hill on their own couldn't say we're going to be test optional. That has to come through the UNC Board of Governors, and they haven't made that determination yet for this coming year. And it's the same thing across the United States. The UCs, actually, it's funny that you mention them. The UCs are, that's it. They're done. They have gone. They are going what we call test blind, which means that not only will the test not, they won't even look at them. They're not even going to look. That hasn't happened yet, but that's what's coming up. There were so many things that came out because of COVID, all of the inequities around testing. So you had students whose parents were able to afford them flying to another state to take the test, and people were doing that. Whereas, quite a few families, they're not able to do that. They don't have the kind of resources to fly across the country and book a hotel room so a student can take a test. So the UCs have realized, there are a lot of inequities in this. So they have basically are shutting down testing.
We're talking to Dr. Belinda Wilkerson. Her company, Steps to the Future, helps young people, families avoid random acts of college planning.
Yes.
So I've gotten that straight. Is there anything going on as it relates to the college essay requirement in the midst of all that COVID has brought?
One of the things the Common Application did last year is they added an additional question to the platform that was optional. And it did ask students if COVID-19 affected your family in some kind of way. And if you want to talk about it, here's the place to talk about it. So that was added to the Common App platform. The other thing they did this year that's really interesting with their essays. So all the essay prompts are out for next year. They dropped one, but they added one where they're asking you to talk about kindness and gratitude. That was a pleasant surprise to see that. So I tell students, so the Common App is the most used application platform. There are other platforms.
So you probably should explain that. What's a Common App platform?
Okay, so the Common Application platform is a platform that over 800 colleges and universities across the United States and internationally use for students to complete their college application. So there's a section of that platform that is common, which means that all of the colleges you apply to on that platform will receive that information. Then there's another section where colleges can have their own separate questions that they want to ask. So there's always a main essay that's usually one of the 7 Common App prompts, but then colleges can also include their supplemental essays. Essays, because we're moving away from testing, essays are becoming more and more important. They always were at some colleges because not every single college requires an essay. But for the ones that do, you want to make sure that you're answering the prompt correctly and that you're addressing what they want to hear, because the essay is the one piece of the application where you can tell your story that doesn't show up anywhere else on the application.
Awesome. So we're here talking to Dr. Belinda Wilkerson from Steps to the Future. We're going to take a break, come back and continue this conversation. As I have always promised, we're going to cover a couple of highlights that I uncovered in Black Enterprise. With the Black Enterprise Daily, some interesting news items there. And please, anyone who's not gotten the COVID-19 vaccine, please go over to E. Smith and do that. We're going to come right back. You listen to WIDU Wake Up.
Yeah.
So we are obviously still on YouTube and Facebook. So
hey, folks.
so unlike the regular radio break where we can chat about all sorts of things,
Right.
You can't exactly do that here. But tell me about Music is Life, and that's why our hearts have beats.
It is. It's so, I think even for me, even more so during this time, there are days when I just need to listen to a particular song, or, I just jam on India Ari or something, and I think music is just moves our souls in a way that nothing else can. It's like the common denominator, I think, amongst people, music. And yeah.
I noted that you have she, her, hers next
Yes.
to your name. I have come to understand that in the academic world, this has become kind of a standard approach to communication. You want to share a little bit about that?
Well, again, it's recognizing that our students have all kinds of experiences and come from all walks of life. So for me, this is my way of supporting my students and families that are LGBTQ plus, using the correct pronouns. By me having this here, it lets them recognize that I support them in who they are and the identity that they choose to present to the world.
Okay.
And I think it's important, as a person of color, as a Black person who's gone through oppression, who's gone through discrimination and prejudice, I feel that I'm not going to discriminate against somebody because of who they love or because of the identity they choose. I just won't do that. I wasn't brought up that way. And for me, I think it's really important that all of our students know, regardless of their sexual orientation, how they identify, that they have value and they have worth. They're all God's children.
Certainly, I endorse the notion of everybody appreciating that they have value and they have worth. I don't know if you have. There's been two programs, documentaries of sorts that I have been trading back and forth between that speaks to this question, and they're both fundamentally tied to the 14th Amendment in many ways. There's the CNN series on Lincoln, and if you haven't been watching it, it's in its fifth episode, I believe.
Okay.
And then on Netflix, there's a program called the 14th Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
And I am I just probably 6 or 7 episodes into that one. I just got finished dealing with women's rights,
Right.
and so they the thing has evolved in very interesting ways. And so in terms of the appreciation, it ties back into education.
Despite several tornado warnings, the only damage reported in
It
the
ties back into
triangles.
education. So I guess I'll terminate
I've
that.
warned
And
and both reported some damage. Troopers have released the names of 2 people killed in a crash in Lenore County on Thursday. The Highway Patrol says 45-year-old Byron Orman from Hookerton and 53-year-old Emma Gatlin died in the crash. Attorneys at the trial of a former Minneapolis police officer charged in George Floyd's death have moved closer to seating a full jury. They chose 3 on Thursday, bringing the panel to 12. 2 alternates still must be chosen. A young boy managed to get hold of a gun on Thursday afternoon and shot his mother in the face as they both rode in a work truck on Interstate 85. Shooting occurred about 1:30 p.m. The woman was taken to Wake Med in Raleigh for treatment of non-life-threatening wounds. Mike Rayleigh, NCI News.
Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. We're seeing the clouds, the rain, and some rather windy conditions today. That'll continue at times through the early afternoon. Wind gusts can be as high as 35 miles per hour, but the rain showers move out later this afternoon, turning drier by this evening. Temperatures, though, falling through the day. This afternoon, expect them in the 40s and low 50s. Sunshine still in the forecast for Saturday, the first day of spring, but temperatures staying chilly, highs in the mid to upper 50s. I'm meteorologist Zach Malak in the Weather Center.
20 minutes away from 10 o'clock. We're going to go back in for the final 20 minutes of this week's edition of Grow Your Business Today. Please forgive me. I made a mistake a moment ago. I said 55 degrees. I should have said 48 degrees. It's got a chill to the air if you've not been out and about. If you're on the way to the vaccination clinic. 48 degrees. Not going to be not going to be hot definitely today, and rain off and on. Let's go back now live to Grow Your Business Today with Darswell Rogers.
Thank you, Wes. Greatly appreciate that. Welcome to the second half hour of the Grow Your Business Today program. Please go over to E.E. Smith High School and get your COVID vaccination. That's incredibly important. I've got Dr. Belinda Wilkerson, the owner of Steps to the Future, in studio with me. Before I jump back into that conversation, I just want to share something with you that I found on Black Enterprise Daily. And if you don't get Black Enterprise Daily, it's certainly a newsletter worth getting. And this one ties perfectly into the conversation we're having today. There's a woman by the name of Pongie Barnes, Pongee. She's a real estate investor and a serial entrepreneur. But the reason why I'm bringing her up today is that she's written a collection of children's book called Little Owners, and it's books about investing in capital, investing in real estate, and broadening your perspective on multiple career opportunities that you would not typically consider as a young person. And so I want to give her kudos. And she wrote the books for her kids, so they've had a great impact there. The other thing, and I'm throwing this in there for Dr. Wilkerson, being from New England. I don't know when that you heard, Dr. Wilkerson, that LeBron James is now a part owner of Fenway Sports Group.
Yes.
So LeBron James is now, as Fenway Sports Group owns the Boston Red Sox, the Liverpool football team, Rouse Fenway Racing, and a part of the regional sports network up there. So we're talking, a major move, owning, the third or fourth best baseball, team in America. They're not Yankees, they're not Dodgers, but they all right, Doctor. They all right.
Yeah, all right. They'll do.
They'll do. So let's turn for a second. I want to ask you about the sign, and something else you got behind you, which is that children begins in kindergarten. And then I want to pivot to a couple of other topics that we mentioned. Just talk a little bit about the notion that actually reminds me of a movie called Working Moms, or some movie that came out in the 1980s where a high-powered executive ended up with a baby because her best friend passed away. And she ends up in Central Park, and she's meeting all these mothers who are freaking out that if their kid doesn't get into the right preschool, they won't get into the right primary school, which means they won't get into Harvard. So I mean, this whole freaky thing that you got to start early with children. So college begins in kindergarten. Talk a little bit about what you mean.
I do not mean what that movie said. It is exact opposite. So a lot of times, so college begins in kindergarten for me is about, and actually, let me talk a little about this poster. This was actually a motto that the Education Trust, which is one of the largest student advocacy organizations in the United States, had as part of their counseling program. And this was actually designed by a young Black graphic designer. Anyway, college begins in kindergarten means helping our students gather that type of social capital that they need in order to even understand the importance of post-secondary education. So it's not about getting them into all these crazy preschools and what have you. It's about taking our kids to the museum and having conversations about what's in the museum. It's about having a library card and using the library system. Now, as the chair of the Board of Trustees for the Cumberland County Public Library System, I am a big proponent of using that library. And even though it's COVID, you can still get lots of great things from the library system. It's about reading to our kids. It's about having books and magazines in the house so that when they get to high school and you're talking about reading, it's not something that, oh yeah, I have to do that. Make reading a part of your family life, and you have to model it so that your kids see it. Find what they're interested in. If it's just something as simple as walking the Cape Fear Trail and looking at nature, but it's having those conversations, building our kids' vocabulary in different ways, exposing them to things, because sometimes I know as a first generation college student, when I went to college, there was so much of that, a part of that college going culture that I didn't know about. So in addition to learning to being a student and having to attend to my classes, I had to figure out how to do college because those conversations didn't take place in my house. So that's about having those conversations with your students. early, and it starts as early as you can, and it starts with books and reading and having magazines, and if you're watching something on Netflix, let's talk about it, but have conversations, because that's how we build our kids' vocabulary, by having conversations.
Speaking of your choice in colleges, one of the text conversations we had revolved around this explosion in topic around HBCUs. Fundamentally, or I guess, it's driven, kind of really exploded because of our vice president,
Yes.
Kamala Harris, who is a Howard University grad, but you can go to Stacey Abrams down in Georgia, who's a HBCU grad, the mayor of Atlanta, the attorney general of New York, all these, and they all happen to be strong Black women, are all graduates of historically Black colleges. Are you seeing an increased interest from students in HBCUs? And just what's your overall take on that as a career path, college choice?
I am definitely seeing, we're definitely seeing an increase awareness of HBCUs and all that they have to offer. When I ask students, so one of the students that I'm working with recently added HBCUs to her list, and so we had that discussion about it. And she said she wants to go somewhere where she can be a student and not have to deal with all the things that come with racism. She just wants to go and be a scholar. And she wants to be in an environment that she knows is going to be supportive of her, isn't asking her to determine her value by somebody else's parameters of what makes a person valuable. So I'm seeing that we're seeing quite a few more conversations around HBCUs. Frankly, when I was coming up, and again, being a first gen, I didn't know anything about HBCUs. So it wasn't even something that was on my radar screen. And as a school counselor, I had to learn more about HBCUs. I'm thrilled that, some of the students that I've worked with, I have a student that graduated from Hampton. And at that time, she was #1 in her nursing class. And I had told her that when she graduated, that I was going to drive down or drive up to her graduation. And I'm so glad I did, because Ruth Cotter, who was the costume designer for Black Panther, was the keynote speaker, because
Oh,
she
wow.
was a Hampton grad.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. I have my husband's family, just about all of them that went to college are graduates of North Carolina Central. So I've learned through family members and through other folks the value of HBCUs. But it's getting students to understand that. And I think, again, it's looking, not all HBCUs are the same. Just like not all PWIs, predominantly white institutions, are the same. So you still have to do your research to see which one is the financial fit for you, which one is the social fit for you, what kind of academic fit are there for you, what kind of opportunities do the colleges offer. I mean, North Carolina A&T is so well known for the engineering, for turning out Black engineers. Xavier of Louisiana, if you want to be a pharmacist or go into the medical field, that's a great place. If you want to go into pharmacy, is to go to Xavier of Louisiana. So there are certain schools that have their niche. So you want to go, if you're looking for a women's college, Spelman or Bennett, definitely looking at those. But it's going on their websites, it's having those conversations, learning more about them. Every college right now has upped their virtual game. You can go on any college's website and connect with an admissions office virtually. They're all doing either college fairs or virtual open houses. Right now, NACAC, the National Association College Admission Counseling, they've been doing a series of virtual college fairs. The next one is this Sunday, March 21st from 1 to 7 p.m. Free registration. You just go on their website and register, and you can even see ahead of time what colleges are going to be there. But you don't have to wait for the college fair. Reach out to the colleges. Go on their website, connect with an admission rep, find out about scholarships. So, for example, North Carolina Central and North Carolina A&T have this fantastic scholarship. It's called the Cheatham White Scholarship. If you get that scholarship, that is a full ride scholarship. By full ride, I mean that's paying for your tuition, it's paying for your books, it's paying for room and board, but there's a certain GPA you have to have, certain test scores you have to have. So that's not something you want to find out about as a junior or a senior, because you want to be working towards that. You don't want to be trying to catch up to find out about that. But again, just imagine going to an HBCU and coming out debt free. So now when you look at grad school, you use that money, other things for grad school. But again, you have to know these are available.
There was a message that we both got about Meharry looking for Black males to enter the medical profession, and this kind of ties into another conversation we wanted to have just about having students choose a diverse set of career paths.
Yes.
So I don't know if you're able to speak specifically to the Meharry, Tennessee State situation or not.
Well, recently, last year, Tennessee State entered into a partnership with Meharry Medical College, where they created a program which shortens the actual time by 1 year of becoming a medical doctor. So you would go to Tennessee State for 3 years, and then as long as your grades and everything were where they were supposed to be, you would then do your 4 years at Meharry Medical College. So it would take 7 years to become an MD versus the typical 8 years. Right now, they recently, they always, excuse me, this is how it always is. They had more than enough females. So now they needed more males. And we have less than 3% of physicians in the United States are Black males. So they were really doing a targeted outreach for Black males, but it's knowing about these opportunities to do that.
And so with that, talk just about the whole question of representation in all career paths, and how do you make those connections for families and students?
Okay. Recently I started, so I do a Facebook Live and I have a YouTube channel where I do information.
Let's be sure we cover that before we get off here. We got about 7 minutes left.
Okay. What I do on that is, because that just exactly what you're saying. So representation matters. I really believe if kids can't see it, they may not know that they can be it. So how do we make sure we do this? So I know one of the things I've started on my YouTube channel and on my Facebook page is I do informational interviews with Black and Brown career professionals, because I want students, not just Black and Brown students, but all students, to see that there are Black and Brown career professionals in different fields. So, next week I have a social worker who's actually was local to Fayetteville coming on. I've had librarians on. I've had a gentleman that I had on a couple of weeks ago, Kevin Menawanu, is in the tech space working with a startup. This young man is out there in Silicon Valley doing it. Okay. He's originally from Rhode Island, went to college in Rhode Island, but knew he had to pivot and make the move to do the kind of work he wanted to do. So it's exposing students to see that these people, there's different career paths out there. I knew teacher because I love school. I didn't have anyone before me that went to college for a particular career path. Kids only know what's in their family, but we need to make sure our kids know what's out there. There's a fantastic podcast called The Tech Rap Queen. And it's
Tech Rap, Queen.
Right. Hosted by Renee Reed, who is a user experience person with LinkedIn. So what she does is she does profiles of Black and Brown career professionals in the tech world. Some fantastic podcasts, what you learn. But if you don't know that these type of jobs exist, then you don't go looking for them. So that's been her mission, to do that. There's actually a LinkedIn event today called Transform Her 21 that is all about Black and Brown career women in the tech field. And it's free. You can just go on LinkedIn and sign up for it. It's from like 1 to 4:30 today with some fantastic speakers. So that's how I'll be spending part of my afternoon, so I can learn more about the different tech opportunities, so that when I'm talking to students about careers, I can talk to them about it, because there are careers that are going to come up in tech that haven't been invented yet.
As a matter of fact, the estimates that we see, because we speak frequently to our clients about the future of technological change, that 65% of the jobs that young people in primary school will have not been invented.
Right.
So we're talking a radical transformation of the economy, the way the world works in a very short period of time. To your point about not knowing about careers, I thought an engineer was the person who drove the train.
Right.
Right. So I was in college taking calculus, and the calculus class I took was in the engineering building.
Okay.
And what's really ironic about this, the fact that I didn't understand this, is that I had two uncles and two cousins that were engineers, and I still didn't understand what it was. Right. So you just cannot underestimate the value of exposure. You really can't.
You can't.
So
And that's
share about your social media activities that you've got going on. We're talking to Dr. Belinda Wilkerson with Steps to the Future. What are you doing in the social media space?
okay. So in the social media space, so on my Facebook page, Steps to the Future LLC, I do a Facebook broadcast every Monday evening at 7 p.m. It actually also streams on my YouTube channel. And on some days, on some Mondays, I'm giving you college advice, college, different information. I think this past Monday, I did a thing on financial literacy based on a conversation I had with another person. But what I try to do the remainder of the time is to do an informational interview with somebody, a career professional that's Black or brown, because I want students to see themselves in those spaces. I want them to see the possibilities. And again, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And it's another way for parents to understand what career fields may be out there for their students and to start those conversations. There's just so much that we don't know. And any way that we can get information out to students about the different career spaces that are out there for them, I'm all for it. I consider myself an information broker. That's what I'm supposed to do. Make sure that you have a place to go and get good information and have connections to people. All of the people that I've talked to have all been generous in saying, if somebody wants to reach out to them to get more information about that particular career, they can do so. I recently had an author on. Let me see if I can find his book here. So he was like pretty good. So it's called Turn On Your Light by Seneca Wilson. And he's a motivational speaker, but he's also, he's also an assistant director of facilities at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. So he's in charge of all the athletic facilities for that particular university. So again, when I have kids talk about they want to go into sports, but they're not going to be the athlete, they need to know that there are other occupations within that field that they may not have thought of. My own son, he knew he wasn't going to be a basketball star, but he wanted to be something in athletics. So he works at American University and he's the assistant director of club sports and intramurals. So he's still involved in the sports world, but that wasn't necessarily something that he knew going into college. He found that out through an internship that he did with Embry-Riddle University post-graduation. So again, it's finding those opportunities to introduce our kids to students or to people who are in different career fields, and how do we do that? And making sure that, okay, you may not be interested in that, but here it is, just in case.
100% agree. I find so frequently that it really is the parents or some sort of mentor that is going to help young people get that exposure. And I'll go back to your comment about there being books and magazines in the home. I mean, that's where exposure comes.
Yes.
It's grandparents, it's uncles, it's aunts, it's older friends that you have that have had some experiences. One of the main things that I like to advise young people is that you can just about pick up the phone and talk to anybody and say, hello, I'm a young person, I'm a student, and I have an interest in what you do for a living. Do you have a few minutes to talk to me?
Right.
There will not be a single, we're too ego driven. Oh, you want to talk to me? Oh, sure. I'll give you a couple of minutes. I mean, and then you'll get in there and you won't be able to shut them up. And I used to do that when I was in college. I'd literally see somebody in the newspaper and I would get to their assistant and I would say, I'm a college student and I'd like to have an opportunity to talk, to learn something. And I have never been turned down. And it's one of the smartest things that anyone can do.
You're so right. Recently, I had to go for a physical, and it was with the physician's assistant versus the doctor. So I asked the question, I said, what made you decide to become a physician's assistant versus going to medical school? That was a fantastic conversation.
Yeah.
Fantastic conversation.
Yeah, we've reached the top of the hour. Belinda, is always great seeing you. You look real well, you know. Continue the good hard work with your students, parents, and helping them avoid making random acts of college planning.
Yes.
Steps to the Future, you can find her on Facebook, LinkedIn, her website. To everybody else, have an outstanding weekend. You're listening to WIDU Wake Up.